there are certain volunteer groups in prison, and Patrick sees this beautiful woman come in, and he convinces the inmate to let them meet. So they meet frequently, and this guy has his charm offensive on. He's charming, all that kind of stuff, and and then he falls in love.
The volunteer?
With Shirley. They all rush in, and they actually find him with a young, office clerk engaging in oral sex through the bars. You know, this guy can just convince any woman in any situation to do what he wants. Hi, welcome to Dangerous Person 2.0, the English channel. I'm Rosie.
I'm Jean.
And we're the daughters of Mary. You might have seen her Chinese YouTube channel, Ngai Him Yamman, and this is the English spin-off of it. So we're going to try and do this justice, and we're going to be introducing a few cases today. So my sister doesn't know, well, Jean doesn't know what case I'm doing at the moment, and I don't know what she's going to tell me. So my reactions and her reactions are going to be completely, I guess, authentic. So I have no idea what she's doing. She doesn't have any idea what I'm doing. So I guess I'll go first. My case today goes back to the late 80s, early 90s in Hong Kong. It's a case that involves 3 people, a very charming and handsome man, and 2 beautiful women. One of which is deceased, unfortunately, and the other, well, was convicted of murder. The man, well, he was eventually acquitted. So when I read this case, I was a little bit kind of like, you know, how can this man be so charming, so manipulative that he has had these women do everything for him and somehow he gets acquitted? So I don't know, you know, obviously the courts acquitted him. The jury acquitted him, so we kind of have to respect that, but I'll let everyone make the decision and opinions for themselves on what they think of this guy. So on May 12, 1989, a highly decomposed body was discovered in a flat in Sha Tin. So the body was found in a metal box on a second floor flat occupied by Patrick David Wong and Kitty Yu. The body was submerged in an alkaline solution and was so decomposed and that it was difficult for the coroner to identify the direct cause of death. But what was noted was that there were fractures to the skull that would have caused a fatal blow if the deceased was alive. Okay, so you get it. Metal box, decomposed body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alkaline solution.
Basically, yeah. They were trying to get rid of the body, and apparently there were there's flesh hanging off the skull and all that, so it was kind of gruesome.
Okay.
That body belonged to Brenda Wong. So Brenda was described as a very glamorous and beautiful woman, and her father described her as ambitious and very hardworking. She was a Cathay Pacific purser, so chief flight attendant.
Okay.
She was working for Cathay Pacific for 10 years, and she was about to get a promotion before she was brutally murdered. She had savings, so she was self-sufficient. And lived by herself. I think at that point of when she was murdered, she had moved out from her family's home and she'd been living by herself for 2 years. So yeah, quite independent. So obviously the 2 people were arrested at the scene, and that was a man and woman, Patrick David Wong and Kitty Yu. And the 2 were actually charged with murder and subsequently convicted of murder in 1991. However, by mid-1993, Patrick David Wong was acquitted following an appeal, whilst Kitty remained in jail. So I think we need to talk about Patrick David Wong. So he's described as a handsome and charismatic man. So he actually immigrated from Hong Kong to the United States when he was young. So he had an American accent. So back then, having an American accent in Hong Kong, all the girls love that, right? I mean, we have an American accent. It's no big deal for us now.
I prefer the British accent, but like... I mean, my fiance's American, so
yes,
here we go.
Yes, sure. But I think like back at the time when you have an American accent, it's like, oh, you're from overseas. You can take me overseas. We can start a beautiful life and all that kind of stuff. And you know, you're well educated. You know, you're not like a typical Chinese guy that's on the street and all that. So like you just have a better future or think of a better future with that accent. So he came back to the Hong Kong in around 1985, 86 that time, and that was because his mother was ill. So he came back to take care of his mother.
That's nice.
That's nice, yes. But however, in New Jersey, he was actually a truck driver. And when he was in New Jersey, he was described still as a womanizer, but he lacked the financial means to become like super womanizer. Like you needed money basically to like go out, buy flashy cars and stuff. And he didn't have the means when he was in New Jersey since he was a truck driver. But as we know now, truck drivers do earn a lot of money.
Yeah.
So he probably didn't. Don't want to say it's because he was Chinese, but probably could be because he was Chinese. I think at that time, probably wasn't a lot of, you know, big job opportunities for the Chinese community. A lot of people had Chinese takeaways and, you know, restaurants and all that. So I guess he was a Chinese truck driver. He immigrated back from the States to Hong Kong in around 1985. His mother, unfortunately, got cancer around 1987, and she died actually a few months after her diagnosis.
Okay.
So he came into inheritance of about 400,000 Hong Kong dollars from her death. A few months later, his father dies. So now he's practically an orphan. He's got some inheritance. And not only that, he decides to sell the family house, or the family property. So he banks another 1.2 million. So at that time, that is a lot of money, right? So he was actually jobless in Hong Kong. He had no job, wasn't employed, but he was living off his savings.
I mean, how long is that gonna last?
Well, how long does that last? We'll see. Unfortunately, after his mother died, he developed a really bad cocaine habit, and it said he spent around $3,000 or something like that a week on cocaine. It was a pretty bad cocaine habit. So he was into his cocaine and gambling as well, but he was also very lucky at gambling. At one point, he actually won $230,000 at the races, the horse racing, and when he cashed it in, he met Kitty Yu.
Why was she working there?
Yeah, she was. She was working at the counter. We'll get into that a little bit more later. So obviously he was living off his savings and all that. But the thing is, like, he claims to have invested his money in stocks, bought some gold and all that. Lucky investments. However, at the time of their arrest, the police did find that the bank accounts were near zero. So, I mean, he's charming enough to trick well, not trick, but like charm everybody to believing he's like this massive playboy. But when in fact, well, I guess we're going to see later what happens. He meets Kitty Yu at the races after cashing his winnings in for $230,000. Look, big sum of, it's not a small sum of money back in the day. It's still not a small sum of money to be winning at the races today. If I won $230,000, I wouldn't be spending it on cocaine. Maybe I'd be probably investing it a little bit better. But this is where he meets Kitty. So Kitty was working at the counter, and when he goes, cashes in his winnings. She's there, and he throws her a 1,000 Hong Kong dollar tip, like, here you go for your troubles, that kind of thing, you know, like as a tip.
Okay.
So she's immediately like, wow, this guy, he's like tall, handsome, and he gave me a $1,000 note. He's like not someone who is just like, you know, the typical Hong Kong guy. He's like, you know, charming. So she was immediately besotted. So they exchanged numbers. They went out on a few dates, and, you know, shortly after that, they became intimate.
Okay.
A sexual relationship. Kitty was actually married.
Okay.
Yeah. So Kitty had a husband, and she was said to be deeply unhappy in her marriage. So she obviously sees this guy with American accent, comes in, is winning a lot of money, so flashy, so cool. I want to go on a date with him. She does. They get involved. And then she develops a cocaine habit.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So now they're both cocaine addicts. They're both doing cocaine.
Oh, dear.
And it's basically said that, this is where it gets really messed up, kind of. Like, this guy is, like, so charming that when she was in jail, she was still giving him money.
How, though?
Through her sister. We'll get into that more a little bit later. Like, even her sister was, like, so enamored by this guy. She's like, you guys are in jail, but, you know, like, I'll be the go-between between Kitty and you, and, you know, like, I'll give her the money. I'll give you the money to buy your $4,000, like, shoes in prison because you need to look good. Like, she was doing all of that. Like, that's how charming this guy was.
Was he hooking up with a sister?
Well, he was in jail.
Oh, yes. Right.
Yeah, he was in jail, but actually that doesn't stop him.
What, in jail?
You'll hear about it later.
Oh my gosh.
I know. This guy is pretty good at womanizing. If he had a PhD in it, he would. He's good basically. So the deceased, Brenda Wong.
Yeah.
Like I said, she was beautiful, glamorous, hardworking, and she had a bright career working at Cathay Pacific for 10 years, and she was about to get a promotion. So she had savings. She had money. She had her own money, and she was, well, working. She actually met Patrick through Patrick's sister, who was also an airline stewardess at that time in 1985. But they didn't actually start dating until 1987 when they bumped into each other. And then she's like, "Ooh, take me to the races," as you do. And so they go to the races and they start a relationship. But keeping in mind, he's actually with Kitty at this time.
Yeah, because it's from 1986.
Yeah, exactly. So the timeline kind of shows that he was already with Kitty.
I see.
And now he's dating Brenda. It's said that Brenda did know about Patrick's cocaine habit. She was aware. Brenda did not do cocaine. But I think what was kind of, I guess, suggested in the reports that I read was that all these women have not savior complex, but they're always like, oh, I can fix him. I can help him. I can do this. If he was just this, he'll be great because he has all these great qualities, but it's just cocaine. I can help him. We can get through this together. We know now, well, I know you can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, and it should never be anybody's business but themselves, right? Girls, listen to this.
I'm guilty of that. Whoops.
Yes, well,
oh, man.
You can't fix him. He's a drug addict. He's going to continue to be a drug addict until something drastic happens. Maybe a murder. Anyway, Brenda and Patrick, seemingly in love. However, and not only that, Brenda actually lends him 50,000 Hong Kong dollars.
Ooh.
Yeah, she lends him money. She lends him money. Back at that time days.
Yeah.
Brenda was described as someone who was very generous when it comes to her family and friends. She would go on trips, obviously for her job, and she would buy lots of gifts for her family. She would come back and she would, be very generous with her gifts. So it's not, I guess, out of character to assume that she would lend her charming and handsome boyfriend 50,000 Hong Kong dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously this money probably went to go fuel his drug habit and gambling habit. So after she started lending him money, he apparently starts to ghost her. What we now know as ghosting. Back then, he just wasn't returning her calls and wasn't being responsive.
Oh, no.
Right? So she gets upset and basically tries to confront him and waits for him outside his apartment and then sees him enter with Kitty into the apartment. So she sees this but doesn't confront him at that point. And that night she flies to London for her scheduled flight. So in London, it's reported that she wrote a letter to him basically saying how can you do this to me? Basically the gist of the letter was she was jealous. She was upset. She's been giving him money and all this kind of stuff. And she basically wrote in the letter, I'm giving you money, but you're living with another woman. And at the end she says, don't worry. I won't pursue what you owe me, even if you were going to give it back to me. So she says this in the letter.
No, did she?
Yes, she did. She wasn't going to pursue him for... From what we can read between the lines, it's not clear whether or not she actually meant the money, but reading between the lines, I think it meant that she wasn't going to pursue him for the money that she lent him. Okay? However, this letter was actually used in court, I think probably to set up a motive that, there was a motive for him to kill her, which was for the money, right? So there's something there, right? Because he has no money.
Yeah.
However, he says that the context of the letter is misunderstood by the court. What she meant when she said, oh, I'm not going to pursue you anymore, was actually I'm not going to pursue you for your affection and love.
Yeah.
Right? That's a weird thing to say, I'm not going to pursue you for affection. No, to me, that doesn't make sense. But that's what he says. That's nothing to do with finances because he repaid her all the money, actually.
Oh, he did?
He apparently, according to him.
Okay.
And what she was saying was just, she wasn't going to pursue his affections because if he doesn't want her, then she doesn't want him. But after that letter, she's still with him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she's still with him.
Oh, no.
Because this guy is just, from reading between the lines and kind of understanding what this guy is about, pretty much probably got him out of trouble and kind of said, Kitty's just my roommate and all this kind of stuff, right? So because in the court documents and all that, and some reports, it does say that like he referred to Kitty as like, he never really referred to her as his girlfriend, but he'd be like, oh, you know, when Brenda was away, Kitty would come to my flat and clean up and then go back home to her husband. Right, okay, yes, 2 cocaine addicts and she's going to go and clean up your flat. That's right. That's exactly what you're doing. It's not that you're doing a coke binge. Yeah, that's not happening. But anyway, this guy is full of weird, like, excuses and reasons, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
So obviously Brenda's heartbroken. She sends a letter.
Yeah, right.
I mean, nowadays I'd probably just send a text.
Send a text message.
You'd send a text and be like, yo, man, no.
I mean, a DM on Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think if this happened to me, I wouldn't have been so gracious. I would have just been like, give me my money back now. But Brenda was kind.
Yeah, I know. That's
and she was
really
kind
nice
and generous. And she really wanted to help this guy.
I know.
And, you know, unfortunately that was, I mean, I don't want to say her downfall because this guy is very manipulative and it's never the woman's, it's not really her fault that she was manipulated this way. And Kitty as well. At this point now, we know that Brenda did lend him $50,000 and we know that probably wasn't given back. And we know that he's airing her calls and we know that she now knows about Kitty.
Right.
So the weird thing is that they're still in a relationship when she comes back from London. On May 6, 1989, that was actually the last time Brenda was seen. Brenda was seen for the last time on that date. On around May 11th or May 12th, 1989, the Hong Kong police received a call from a pastor. That pastor was a downstairs neighbor of Patrick David Wong. So that pastor lived below him. It's said that the pastor never really liked Patrick because he was flashy. He was everything against what a religious man would want to be associated
so Patrick's
with.
religious?
No, but he's not. He just lived above a pastor.
I see.
He lived in a block of flats. I think it was like a Spanish villa in Sha Tin. So it was like 3 blocks of flats. He was on the top 2 and the pastor was in the bottom 1. And apparently the pastor had lived there for 5 years and he, was comfortable living there until Patrick moved in. And Patrick was coming and going at all times of the night, lots of time with many beautiful women with him, right? So he's just like, this goes against everything a religious man should be. I would much rather prefer a family move in rather than this guy who's, kind of shady. It's not what I would like to be associated with. So around May 12th or May 11th, May 12th, calls the police and complains about his neighbor. He complains that he's smelling a weird smell.
Okay.
And that smell cannot be shifted. And worst of all, and the smell cannot be shifted. There's comings and goings. It's a really weird smell. Pastor concludes he must be making drugs. He must be making drugs, right?
Okay.
So at no point did the pastor say that, I think he's killed someone, just as I think he's making drugs.
Okay.
Right? So at first the police were just like, okay, well, this is a civil matter. It's like, it sounds like a dispute, but obviously they hear, okay, drugs. Okay, let's go look it out. Look out for it. Let's go and check it out. So they get to the flat, they get to Patrick's door, and they knock on it, and nobody responds. Okay, so they're banging on it at this point, saying, police, open up. And, obviously, they're banging the door down. So he doesn't hear anything. They can also smell this weird smell. They break down the door. No one is in the first floor flat. No one's on the first floor. So they're like, okay, fine. They go upstairs, and they find Patrick in the bathroom. And he's like apparently acting surprised, but he must know that someone's knocked on the door. Like you're allowed. Like, why are you being like, "Ooh, I didn't know you were here"? No, you know they were there. You're just trying to get your story straight. Okay, that's my view, right? You knew. Like if someone was knocking on my door and it was the police at in the AM, you could hear them. They question him and say, where's the drugs? And he was like, okay, the drugs are here. And leads him to the table downstairs in the living room. And he's like, small packet of cocaine. Obviously, it's a small pack of cocaine. Doesn't mean that you're making drugs. And usually drug making has a distinct smell. And that distinct smell is described as something that's sickly sweet. Now, this smell was not sickly sweet. It wasn't anything like that. It was rotten. It was it wasn't good. It smelled like death, basically. It didn't smell like drug making.
Yeah.
So the police are looking around. There's no drug making paraphernalia. Smells like death. They start to look. Kitty at this point was on the second floor and she looked disheveled.
Oh, she was there.
Yeah, she was there. And she was looking disheveled. So on the second floor, there was also a living room, right? And that living room was kind of bare and had a few bottles around. And they were just like, okay, this is weird. But the smell was emanating from the bathroom, And as they get closer to the bathroom, the smell gets worse. So they go in and they see a metal box. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop here. Let's go back to the pastor.
Okay.
So the pastor is smelling the smell. And the day before, on about the day before he calls the police, Kitty comes downstairs and she goes, "Oh, I am so sorry for that smell. It's because I had goldfishes and my goldfishes have died."
What?
Yeah. So that smell you are smelling is the goldfish.
I mean,
Yeah, I know. So that's the excuse that she gives. And then later on that day, Patrick comes down and is like, "I'm so sorry for that smell. What that smell is the rabbits. We had rabbits and now they've died too. So now you've got dead rabbits and dead goldfish in the flat, and that's what's causing the smell."
but like, I mean, what would a dead rabbit smell like? I mean, I don't eat rabbit.
I don't know what a dead rabbit smells like, but dead goldfish, but I don't think it would be
exactly,
so
right?
bad that it would make not only the flat upstairs smell, the stairway smell,
Oh, yeah?
and like everything. Like I don't, like, you know what I mean?
that bad?
Like it's that bad that it's a smell that cannot be shifted. They even hired a maid to come clean like the outside stairway because it was so bad. But that didn't get rid of the smell. But they had actually told that maid that the smell was because of dogs and because the previous maid didn't clean properly. So basically, they're blaming that smell on dead rabbits, dogs, and
Fish.
dead fish, right? That's the excuse that they've given. So obviously, the pastor he didn't say anything, but, just kind of like, okay. And it was until later his wife called him, and because she had saw some, I don't know if she had saw, but it was reported that there was red liquid in the drain outside that was coming from from the second flat. And it wasn't like liquid that it was fluid. It was like sludge, like oozing kind of thing. And
Yeah,
it
like-
smelled.
yeah.
It's described as being like shrimp paste, basically, shrimp paste.
What?
So that happened. So let's go back to them finding the box, right? So the police ask, "What's in this box?" And he goes, "It's my dog. He died.
Oh no.
My dog is in that box." And the police are just like, okay.
Wait, how big is this box?
I'm not too sure. I think it's big enough to hide a body.
Okay.
It's a box. It's a substantial box. Something's in that box. So you know something's
Yeah,
in that
right,
box, right? Like something, there's like, it's putrid smell coming out of it. There's like
jeez.
holes like on the top as well, apparently, described as having holes on top.
Yeah.
So they open it and they see sludge. And on top of the sludge, there is like activated charcoal or just charcoal and basically trying to get rid of the smell. So they know it smells. So they're trying to it looks like you're trying to get rid of something there. So the police open the box, and what's said, now I don't know if this is true, they look into it and they kind of dig out, like looking into it with a screwdriver, kind of poking around, and then they take it out and they find a skull.
What? What do you mean? How?
So you get screwdriver, well,
I mean, like, would they
they fished out the skull and they saw the skull with flesh hanging up, highly decomposed.
Okay.
Yeah, highly decomposed. So no ways of identification at this point, facially,
Yeah,
like
right.
it's unrecognizable. And this is where it's a little bit not funny, but like a little bit peculiar. They don't actually get arrested for murder
At the time.
at the time, right?
Okay.
Because there is not enough evidence to arrest them on murder charges. But what they could arrest them on was for possession of drugs. Mm-hmm. So they were arrested for possession of drugs whilst the police investigated. The police know already that this is this is a murder investigation. We're going to start the murder investigation, but we can't arrest them on murder charges.
Yeah.
So we're going to arrest them on drug possession and keep them in the cell just for now, because you don't want them to leave, right?
Yeah.
And you or go into hiding or anything like that. So they were arrested. I think at this point they were cautioned as well.
I see.
So everything you say or do can and will be used against you, that kind of thing. And they were made to sign a statement. Now, Patrick is he's educated. He's from the States. He knows his rights. He knows that if you start saying something, it's going to be used against you. So he immediately asks for legal counsel. Kitty, on the other hand, starts to blame Patrick saying, you know, I blame him for my cocaine addiction, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. So they were actually taken to hospital before they were taken to a prison cell, because of, they were basically described as being on a cocaine binge.
Okay, so they're probably not of the right mind.
Yeah, basically. They were dehydrated, tired, but they were on cocaine as well, highly strung on cocaine. So they were taken to hospital. Doctor said that they needed to be there for a few days. In the hospital, I believe that's where she gave a police statement. Patrick was not talking at this point because he knew his rights and he was clued up enough to say that if I say anything now, it's going to be used against me. But Kitty just was blaming him. So she gives a statement and she says that on the night of May 6th, or about that time, she was with Patrick and Brenda at the flat playing cards. Patrick and Brenda decided to go into the room to sleep for the night, and that's fine. So Kitty stayed up doing cocaine and watching TV. So as she watched TV, the races came up.
Wait, hang on. Brenda and Kitty were in the same...
Yeah, I know.
Despite them...
Yeah. Okay, right? So Kitty and David, Patrick actually lived together as well.
And Brenda obviously knew.
Yeah, because she was...
Okay, sorry, go on.
Well, that's what they say. Okay, this is what the story says, okay?
Okay.
So she says that Brenda and Patrick go to bed, and then she's doing cocaine, watching TV. She goes, and the races come up. So she's like, okay, the races are up. Let me see if Patrick wants to place a bet on the horses. So she goes into the room. Patrick's awake. She tries to wake up Brenda, but she won't wake up. So she now at this point wants to call the ambulance. But Patrick's just like, no, don't call the ambulance. And then she threatens to beat her up. And then Kitty tries to leave, and Patrick goes, well, if you leave, I'm going to blame you. You're going to take all the blame. I'm going to say that you killed her. So obviously she doesn't. So she gives this statement to the police. Weird enough, that statement goes missing. No one can find the statement anymore.
Okay.
So apparently an internal investigation was opened. Where is the statement? Where is it? Finds out that Kitty's dad was a retired police officer and sister was a police officer. Yeah. So maybe something happened there. It,
maybe
fell into the shredder. How about that?
Yeah, maybe.
So there's no statement anymore. So bit by bit by bit, the police had to piece what happened through witness statements and people who heard things. So this is what they think had happened. So on May 6th, a neighbor heard a fierce quarrel between two women.
Ooh.
Right? And a man was heard interjecting. And the gist of the fight apparently was about how one woman felt that the other was like that the man was more on her side, or and she was being bullied or something like that. But basically the man was siding with one of the women.
Right.
That's a fight in the AM of 6 a.m.
Okay.
A fight happened. On the evening on May 6th, someone calls into Brenda's work at Cathay Pacific. I think it was to the Cathay Pacific Airlines crew controller.
Okay.
Claiming to be Brenda.
Okay.
Saying, I'm sick. She actually had a flight scheduled that evening at 10:40 to Frankfurt, to Germany.
Right.
So someone calls in saying, I'm sick. I need 4 days sick leave. And at that time, the policy was that you need to provide a sick note.
Yeah.
Sick note never came. Okay.
Okay.
So the sick note never came. Someone's called in, sick leave and all that. On May 7th, the next day, all of Brenda's credit cards were used up to her 40,000, I think around 40,000 limit, and all her bank accounts were drained.
Oh.
All the money's been taken out. Oh. So apparently Kitty had went on a spending spree using her credit cards. She had forged her signature. And the thing is, Kitty has actually had, kind of like gotten into trouble with using her boss's credit cards and stuff. So she's got, she knows how to forge stuff. She knows how these things work. Yeah. So she was out buying, like gifts and all that, using her cards, draining her bank account. At this point, there's not really any mention of whether or not Patrick had anything to do with it. It's just all Kitty doing it at the moment.
Okay.
However, we know how clued up this guy is. Yeah. If I had done something, if I was him and I knew, my hands are clean. She did it all.
Yeah.
But that's not the only thing she bought. She also went to, the hardware store and she bought bottles of caustic acid, caustic soda, nitric acid, and some alcohol, to get rid of a body. It's basically things she needed to get rid of a body or dissolve it. So apparently in between May 6th and May 12th, they did actually have friends visiting the flat. They never saw Brenda there. But what they did see was Patrick looking really tired. Right? So one friend actually said that Patrick came down from the second floor and was sweating and had said that he just finished moving something upstairs.
So it's from the friend's testimony that said that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Well, witness statement. At this point, it's still not concrete evidence. It's all circumstantial. It's nothing that proves that he's done anything, right?
Okay.
All that is that they've prevented the lawful burial of a body. I think that's the only thing that you can prove. At this point, you can't really prove that they killed someone.
Okay.
So all circumstantial evidence. And actually this went on to court on circumstantial evidence. And they're actually convicted on circumstantial evidence.
Okay.
So like I said, the body was actually heavily decomposed. So they actually didn't know who she was when they found the body. So this is actually quite sad. When the news hit, it was all over, like when the news of a body was found in Shatin, it was all over the news and all that kind of stuff. The family actually saw the building
and recognized
it, and I think they recognized it, and they also knew they had never met Patrick before, but they knew that Brenda was dating someone with the last name Wong. And they also knew that I think he had a flat in Shatin. It was all over the news, and they obviously hadn't heard from her, so they called the police and said, I think this might be my daughter. I think something's happened. Like, I think it might be linked because we can't find her. And like everything is just, so they find out through the news.
Horrible.
Right? Absolutely horrible. I think she was an only daughter as well. And she
really?
Yeah,
no.
I can't. Like, I have kids.
That's really sad.
Yeah. And so the police actually go to Brenda's flat and they get her fingerprints. And when the body was actually put in a fetal position inside the box.
Okay.
Right? Metal box. And we know that there was a lot of like liquid in there to dissolve the bodies. But however, her hand was just above the acid so that her fingerprints could be lifted. Partial fingerprints. So that was how she was identified.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So that's how she was identified. So now she's been officially identified as Brenda Wong.
Yeah.
Right. So this goes to court. And I think at this point, Patrick has still not said a word. Hadn't said anything.
Okay.
But he just denies that. He completely denies that he killed her.
So did he testify in court?
No.
Oh, really?
I don't think he did. No, he didn't. Nothing that says he testified. Just didn't say anything. Right? So that's basically the thought. If I don't say anything, you can't get me. There's no evidence. Blah, blah. All that kind of stuff. Right. So they're in jail. They go through the trial. The judge instructs the jury on how to kind of navigate this and how to convict them. So I think what happened was that they basically lied. It's obvious that they lied, right? So the judge kind of pointed to the jury and said, look, if you think this guy has lied, like lying isn't an admission of guilt, right? However, but you need to understand or think about why he lied. That kind of direction. So as a jury, if you think, okay, I'm going to think about why this guy lied, he's obviously lying because he did it, right? He's trying to protect himself. He's lying. He did it, 100% did it. So that's kind of where the jury was kind of, pointed to, like directed at by the judge. This actually went to appeal because of that.
Okay.
Right. We'll get into that a little bit more. So Patrick is in jail now and Kitty's in jail now. And during the jail, like obviously different jails, man and woman, right? They were still kind of communicating. In fact, he actually had women still coming into the prison to like give him gifts and all that kind of stuff. He still kind of had that hold over women. And I don't know if it's because he's now like a killer. Women are more attracted to that. I don't know. But he's a very charismatic guy anyway. He had connections with women outside who would still do things for him. One of the women was actually Kitty's sister. Kitty's sister would frequently frequently visit him in prison and act as a go-between, him and Kitty bring messages and all that. And at one point, I think Kitty actually gave him some money to like buy like a really expensive suit for court. But there was also one point where he says to the sister, you should tell Kitty to write to the U.S. consulate and tell them about the old story.
Oh man,
what old story?
What old story?
Well, we don't know what the old story is, but he's basically trying to convince Kitty to tell them something that would help with the appeal, right?
Okay.
So this happens, and during this time, there are certain volunteer groups in prison where people volunteer, like religious people come in and volunteer and speak to the prisoners and all that kind of stuff, trying to like reform them and all that. And this is what was happening with one of the inmates in prison, and Patrick sees this beautiful woman come in and speak with an inmate. So he's like clocked onto her already.
No.
Like, okay, this is a beautiful woman, you know.
Okay.
And he convinces the inmate to let them meet. So they meet frequently, and this guy has his charm offensive on. He's charming, all that kind of stuff. And and then he falls in love.
The volunteer?
With Shirley.
Oh dear.
Shirley is, not much is known about her, but she's kind of described as a religious woman, like in the religious sect, get this, Children of God. The cult.
Oh.
They're now called, I think it was International something Friends. I can't remember what it is, but they rebranded because back then the Children of God, where there was a lot of controversy, basically named as a cult and all that. Don't come from me, Children of God people. But basically it's a very charming sect of Christianity. Well, they claim to be Christianity, a sect of it. I think that probably deserves its own, episode, because the Children of God have crazy kind of like tactics to lure people in. But it's not, if you know about them, it's not like, it kind of makes sense that he would join that.
Okay.
It's kind of in line with the kind of person he is, basically.
Yeah.
So he apparently finds God, finds, new love and all the kind of stuff, and decides to marry Shirley in prison.
Okay, well, okay.
And this is whilst all the appeals going on, like the appeals going on in the background. However, he doesn't actually tell Kitty he's gotten married, because he wants Kitty to still give the information and all the kind of stuff. So basically, the appeal happens, and the grounds for the appeal, was basically that Kitty lied, and now she's admitting she's lying. She's now admitted to killing Brenda, so completely, absolving him all the blame. Like, he didn't do it, I did everything, basically.
Oh gosh.
So obviously, the back in the first trial, the judge was directing the jury to say, like, oh, look, if you believe, these lies, but these lies are lies, so they're not. Yeah. So now you got to retry it. So they did a retrial.
Oh, right? They did.
Yeah, they did a retrial. So at the retrial, he apparently meets Kitty, and then he tells her, oh, BTW, I'm married now. And she's humiliated, right? Because I think he had promised her that once I get out, I'm going to help you, I'm going to, get, like basically campaign to get you out and all this kind of stuff, right? And she's going to believe him. Like, she's like besotted with him. She's like still communicating with him, even in prison, like, we're in this together. But he had different ideas, right? He's completely married another woman. And he's kept that from you, 100%. Like, but I think one thing you have to know about Patrick is that when he was actually arrested, they put Kitty and him in adjoining cells. Okay. When they're at first for holding. So they're in different cells, adjoining cells, and then basically the police officers start hearing panting, like weird noises coming from the cells. So she's like, oh my gosh, he's like hurting her. He's hurting Kitty. So they all rush in, and they actually find him with a young office clerk engaging in oral sex through the bars. Like, that's how, that's a story. I don't know how true it is, but I guess it paints a picture as to how, this guy can just convince any woman in any situation to do what he wants. But also, by the by, I don't know what kind of person would want to have oral sex when they're in jail. You know what I mean? He's not right. I mean, he's not right in the head. Demonstrates how much of a womanizer he is and how charismatic he is, and how all these women just flock to him. Like, he's so charming. I can fix him. Like, I'll give him oral sex between the bars. It's fine. All right. So during the retrial, he has to convince the jury, right? So he's like, I'm religious now. I am, I found love, and all this kind of stuff, all the rumors in jail that I was dealing drugs, that's not true. I'm a changed man. I've married. I found love and all this kind of stuff. And he's like clutching a Bible.
Is he though?
Yeah, apparently clutching a Bible, like trying to show everyone that he's like this reformed person, that he never did anything. In fact, no, he loved Brenda. He was going to marry Brenda. right? All this time, it was her. Like, he didn't like Kitty. Kitty was never. So he was basically humiliating Kitty, saying that she was nothing and all that kind of stuff.
Oh dear.
And like, I love Brenda. Like, we were going to get married and all that kind of stuff. But not only that, his new wife, Shirley, was actually the convincing person in this whole trial, saying like, this is my husband. I love him. We're gonna, he's a reformed man. She came out to vouch for him to the jury, and the jury actually believed her.
Yeah, but isn't part of Christianity to repent for your sins? So obviously, if he sins, you repent. He's a man of God now. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So he's a man of God.
So he should repent.
Well, not only that he just didn't do it.
Well,
exactly. Everything you've heard is not true. I may have been a womanizer before. I'm not like that. I found love. Like, I'm religious. And he didn't do it. Kitty did it. She's now admitted. So he actually gets acquitted. He gets acquitted for murder.
Okay.
Whilst Kitty gets sentenced for actually manslaughter now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so she gets 7 years. Well, but she's humiliated, right? She's humiliated. Like, I did everything for you, and you've done this to me.
Well, what did she do when she came out? 7 years?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, they're obviously both still in the wild.
Well, there's actually an interesting point I'll get to later. So, all this happens, and he's found love and all that, but there was another charge that was against him, which was preventing the unlawful burial, preventing the lawful burial of someone who's deceased. That's a crime here, right? He actually got acquitted for that too. So he's walking a free man. He is a free man. So,
what?
Yeah.
But it was the box was in his bathroom, so. And he'd even call the police. So basically, his excuse was that he at first said, "Oh, I had no idea Brenda was there. No idea." You didn't even smell?
Well, I thought it was the dead animals.
Fish?
Yeah, but because they're just like, well, they're all the court question. Like you kind of knew. It was, oh no, I didn't know that she was there. I thought it was like dead fish. I was so messed up on drugs. You know what? I couldn't even smell it. That's what he said because of my cocaine usage, and he actually apparently demonstrated it by putting
my gosh
a tissue through his nose. Like, see how bad my nose is? I can't smell anything.
He had
So he's like, I can't smell anything. So of course I didn't know. I didn't know anything. So yeah, he was acquitted. Like, this guy he knows what he's doing, right?
Okay.
Very charismatic guy. So he gets acquitted. Apparently, the outside court, he gives like a short speech, saying like, I loved her and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, the poor family, they obviously think that this is injustice. This guy needs to be punished in some kind of way, and he gets off scot-free.
Exactly.
I mean, rumor has it apparently flew to Macau to avoid because he knew that they were gearing up to come get him again, right?
No, obviously.
Yeah, so he kind of left, I think.
Okay.
We don't know why. He basically said that he was, after I get released, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue with the volunteering program where I met Shirley. I'm going to do this for release. I don't know if he did it. Probably didn't. He fled, right? But get this. After he was released, he was kind of notorious, I guess. He was kind of notorious.
Again? For what?
Well, because he got acquitted and he's good looking and all that kind of stuff, right? People like this morbid stuff, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
And he gets approached by a controversial businessman or entrepreneur, and they set up this weird hotline that people can call in. I don't know,
ridiculous.
Yeah, that people can call in, and he's like pre-recorded some stuff, and even Shirley's pre-recorded some stuff, and you got to pay for this, and apparently got $1 million Hong Kong dollars out of it.
No, but what hotline for what?
Well, it's a hotline that basically him talks about his philosophy, and like you can press 1 to listen to this, press 2 to listen to this. Like, it's one of those weird things that like people are like, wow, this is weird, I'm gonna do it. And people did do it, and he got money from it. But not only that, there's a lot of movies that are based on this as well. Like Chinese movies that are based on this. Now, I don't know whether or not he got like monetary compensation for it, whether they asked him or anything, but he strikes me as a person who would have some involvement, right? It does strike me. But there are lots of movies made about him and all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, Kitty's in jail. Yeah, and Brenda's dead. His heartbroken family, they don't get the answers. But not only that, this guy is, a pure womanizer. And the funny thing that I wanted to talk about was that he actually reached out to Mom.
Our mom?
Yeah. So this guy actually reached out to Mom, and this was when she was doing her radio show and she was covering his case. So he reached out and he said that he wanted to tell his side of the story. Everything in the reports, the media and all that, this is not accurate. So I want to come out and I want to tell my side of the story. But Mom just didn't give him that platform and ignored him, which I think is a good idea. More interested in Kitty's side of the story and what she not actually what happened, but like how does she feel after all these things? You know what I mean? Like it's like you did so much for someone to then have this happen to you. Are there any regrets? Were you still talking to him, right?
Yeah.
You know, because he's a reformed man, he's married now. But 18 months after he got acquitted,
yeah,
him and Shirley divorced. Yeah.
Okay.
So this guy is a pattern of using women consistently.
Oh dear.
And now he's acquitted. Acquitted. So that is the story of Brenda Wong, Patrick David Wong, and Kitty Yu. So if you like our show, or if you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and share.